We've got quite a night installed for everybody. Welcome to another Wellbeing's Essential Conversation. We got Michelle Nazaroff in the house tonight, and Michelle is as passionate as she is inspirational. She's transforming her own life and others people's life with like healthy, natural nutrition and fitness. I know Michelle a long time now. Michelle is a natural bodybuilder. She's an international judge, judging bodybuilding championships all over the world. She's, what would you call her? She's a holistic nutritionist. She's a vegan chef. She's a master, also a conditioning coach. I think it's the IPAC. She's also a detox coach. It's hard to know what Michelle's not because she sees so many things in one body. She's lived quite a life, and she's also the director owner of Pressedplus protein juice company from Australia. And really, it's like Michelle empowers other people, basically by sharing her story from hospital bed to wait for this one, world champion bodybuilder. Number one spot. So Michelle Nazaroff, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. Really, really is. Yeah. It's so good to see you again. I haven't seen you and spoken to you for quite a few years since we had the retreat I came on of yours where I first met you.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you who are tuning in, I'm a naturopath. I'm also a therapist, and we have run retreat programs for years now, just helping people again transform, lean into their bodies, detox, get in touch with their emotions, get in touch with connecting with themselves and others. And this is where I bumped into this little scallywag about 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So
7 or 8 years ago. It's gone quick though. A lot's gone on in those 7 or 8 years too, Nigel.
Yeah, there's been a maturing, I think, for both of us, and really for those who don't know a little bit, let's take them back to the thing that inspired me when I first met you, which was just the beginning. Just for those this journey, we've got lots to cover, but just the backdrop of what fueled you to be who you are today. That the journey from the hospital bed to world champion and everything that happened in between. So share us a little bit about that.
It's been quite a journey, but an amazing journey, because I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't have gone through everything. And during that time, I suppose, when I was going through it, I was like, why is this happening to me? You know what I mean? But it's been a blessing in disguise after all these years, and I've created an amazing kind of life from it. But yes, and I mean, look, you know what it is. It all started when I was 7, Nigel. I kind of wanted to ride horses, and not being the average 7-year-old, I kind of set some goals. I wanted to represent my country in the Olympics. So I wanted to be, at 7, had written it down, put it on the fridge, given it to my mum and dad, and said, I want you to take me to Pony Club. I want you to buy me a pony, but I will represent my country and I will get to the Olympics.
So determined, my God.
I know, and that's at 7. So no one's taught you at that age how to goal set or do anything. So I think it was kind of just within me, and what parents could say no to that, right? So I was very, very lucky. They listened to me. They were very open. I obviously, to cut a long story short, they gave me every opportunity to ride horses, which I did. And I rode all over Australia, and then I was going to go ride in Europe, and I was well on my way to that Olympic dream of riding in dressage. And then 2 weeks before I was going to go and live in Europe for a couple of years and ride and pursue that dream, I had a terrible riding fall and I broke my neck. So I used to ride other people's horses, to like show jumping. I used to do barrel racing. I mean, I'm a classically trained dressage rider, riding barrel racing, show jumping on the weekends to make a little bit of extra money to pay for my horses, because I ended up with 6 horses in work at the time. Hey,
Michelle. Hey, what age were you when you had that fall?
I was 18. Yeah, so just at that pivotal age, you know. But look, Nigel, I left high school very young. I left at year 10 to ride, pretty much to ride professionally. I needed to work. I was a kennel maid. I rode horses on the weekends. You know, I did everything you can imagine, because I mean, I'm coming from a family that are horsey, so people will understand that are in the equestrian world, that aren't born into equestrian. You know, it's a hard slog, and it's an expensive sport. My parents didn't know anything about it, so it was because I was so passionate from such a young age, and I put the work in. You know, I had the work ethic. It was just in me. No one taught me that. It was just, this little girl did the right thing every day. I think that's why I became such a great bodybuilder, because I'm consistent and I could do the hard things day in, day out. You know, I was always first to feed my horses. My horses were always, you know, I was up. I used to sleep in my jodhpurs and my my outfit, because it was always cold in the morning. I would get ready the night before, so my horses would get the best feed, you know, things like that when I was on camps and stuff. But yeah, so anyway, my parents gave me every opportunity. Just before I went to ride in Europe, I had that terrible fall, and basically the top of my vertebrae was pushed through the base of my skull, and I also crushed my coccyx at the same time. It was like a one end of the spine to the other. Yeah, bang. Like, it was a really serious accident. Probably should have died, or most definitely would have been a paraplegic, like really. So how I did it, and they say now, is because I was in such a straight position, and it kind of jacked, like I didn't twist. It was just a crushing kind of injury. The vertebrae was protected. So, but basically, now that the top of my neck was extremely weak after that, and high risk for, if I had a fall, hit my chin, anything like that, it could damage the spinal cord. Or so my riding career, Nigel, was basically over in a matter of 3 minutes. So, and you know, from 7 years old, and I know, you know, that probably doesn't mean a lot to other people, but during high school, you know, primary school, high school, I was not reclusive, but I was so committed to the goal, to the outcome that I had wanted, you know.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a very social being. Yeah.
Yeah. So Michelle, so what happens when what you were fueling to become from 7 to 18 is taken away? Like, how was that journey, those months?
Yeah, I was, you know, the injury, I was recovering in hospital. I was in traction for about 6 weeks or so. You know, there was quite, you know, it was quite a, they were like thinking it was quite miraculous that I didn't do more, you know, like I wasn't in worse shape than I was. But for me, emotionally and mentally, it was a massive blow, because, like I say, I wasn't really friends. Like, I wasn't in the friend group at school. I had, you know, as soon as school finished, I was off riding the horses. I loved animals, or my horses, more so than people. I had that affinity with them, you know, and my Great Danes. So I was like, spent all my time with them. And so when I had the accident, Nigel, I didn't really know how to handle myself in space or in society. And I basically fell into a deep depression, and I went on a bit of a bender and a drinking, you know, smoking, processed food rampage for about 10 years. 10 years, I could not find, I didn't know, I basically was set out to damage my body, damage myself, because I honestly, truly felt that my body had let me down. You know, like, I wasn't able to achieve that goal of becoming and representing my country in the Olympics or being a world champion. And so I set out to damage it. And I also felt a lot of pain and regret for my parents, because they gave up so much for me financially to support the dream and support the goal. And I really felt terrible that I didn't deliver, you know, like I couldn't deliver that outcome that they had sacrificed. My father worked months and months and years on end away from the family to make enough money to support, you know, and help me with the horses. So I really felt a lot of deep pain and regret, and I really went down into a downward spiral very quickly.
Yeah, and just, I'm feeling it into the reality. I'm trying to feel it in my own being, like what it would feeling the sort of anger towards the body that it let you down, and then just the weight, the heavy weight and pressure of the guilt and the shame, and then internalizing it and not being able to talk about it and having to medicate then to try to just get through the day or the 100%. Week. Or the
and
month.
Because I wasn't open, I wasn't social, I didn't gravitate towards talking. I went within, I withdrew 100%. Yeah. And also, like, I've got 2 brothers and a sister. I love them dearly. There was issues with them because my mum and dad kind of filtered and kind of fostered a lot of their energy to me. So there was so much that I was like, oh my gosh, I've taken so much energy or so much money, so much time and effort from mum and dad, and now I haven't delivered, and they felt quite, not resentful, but like they didn't get as much attention as, say, I did, So I really did feel,
it doesn't help support closeness, at those, at that age, the animosity, sort of, sort of jealousy, sort of distance, and all the things that you don't need when you're in a depression, by the way.
100. And I didn't have a massive friend group at school because, as soon as school finished, I was off. Everyone thought I was quite aloof, Where's she go? Oh, she doesn't want to hang out with us. It was like, well, I had such goals and so much work that needed to be done. I needed to go. So there was nobody really to draw off or really confide in other than my Great Danes and my horses. But that wasn't enough. And then, I really went down. For 10 years, I did that,
What turned it around? What turned it around?
Well, I hit rock bottom when I had a terrible car accident. So, I think, and look, at the end of the day, I do say to people, because I speak all over the world about this and I'm very open with my story. And it's like, we need to just get real with where we finally end up or where we're at. And I had a terrible car accident. I fell asleep at the wheel on the freeway here in Western Australia, and the car flipped, and luckily I was on my own, but I ended up on the other side of the freeway on oncoming traffic. Now, I could have killed multiple people, not only myself, but I could have killed others. And I think that was the catalyst for some change for me, Nigel, because of the fact that I was setting out to damage myself, but I was never setting out to damage anybody else. Like, my makeup and my blueprint was all about, trying to be the best and also bring other people to become the best along with me. So when I thought that I could have killed your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your children, wow. And honestly, Nigel, I should have died in that car accident because every panel on the vehicle was crushed. I ended up, it rolled, I don't know, so many times, but the fire department, everything come to cut me out. I had no seatbelt on, I'd fallen asleep, I'd slipped underneath the steering wheel, the only thing that kept me alive. But the entire car was probably about this tall. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, nobody, if there was a passenger, they would have never survived. And so for me, I think that was like number two lifeline that was given to me. I walked out with a broken wrist. It was snapped like this. And when they cut me out, I was like, and the fire department, the police were like, how has anybody even survived this? And all I've got is a broken wrist. So I think that was the catalyst for me, in the fact that it really made me take stock of what I'd become from, and and because I treated death the second time. And I was like, wow, what I'm doing is not good for me. It's not good for others, and it's certainly not for the greater good. And that was the catalyst for change. And I went, you know what? I'm a disgrace to society. I'm a disgrace to my family. I'm a disgrace to me. But you know what? I'll draw a line in the sand, and that's okay, because I can massively take action and completely change this. And that's when I set a goal to try to become the healthiest person. I mean, you can tell I'm a bit of an extremist, like all or nothing, right? So that's when I decided, I thought, you know what?
A little bit.
I've been given 2 lifelines. No matter whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever, there's something bigger than me that allowed me to stay alive twice. Because obviously I thought, you know what, there's probably something really amazing and something better for me to do, or very important, other than just being that world champion. So that was the catalyst for the change. Yeah.
So I'm imagining the sort of getting healthy was maybe you visiting the gym for the first time.
Yeah. So what happened was, at that time, after years and years of kind of, aimlessly wandering around job to job, not looking after myself, I was living at home with my parents again. And my mum bought me a gym membership, and she's like, for goodness. And I said, Mum, I want to get healthy. I want to change. She goes, well, the best thing I think you could do is join the gym. So she joined me up, and I went along. And, by that stage, I mean, people go on my website or whatever, and they can look at the story. They'll see a visual, and I was hugely fat at the end of, binge drinking and smoking and whatever. Eating processed foods it's not conducive to look lean, you know what I mean? So I was really overweight and unfit, and it was, going into a gym was like the biggest fear ever. But the why was so strong by that stage, Nigel, you know what I mean? When you really look at what you'd become, or how far removed you were from from years prior, you know what I mean? Like, I was an Olympic hopeful, I was an elite athlete, and where was I now? No job, living at home, obese, chain smoker, drinker. I mean, just crazy. And then nearly killed all these people, right, in a car accident. So very far removed from my potential. So I thought I can do that. Anyway, so she joined me up, and I went in, and I just immersed myself, because, again, I think I kind of put my little bit of an athlete hat back on, and about taking action, and massive action. Like, if that's the great thing about hitting rock bottom, you're only going to bounce back up, but you've got to grab it and look at it as an opportunity and let it drive you and let it fuel you. And that's exactly what I did, because going into a gym from the state that I was in, and also an equestrian rider, we don't train in the gym, we ride horses. That was a completely foreign world to me. So it was a little bit scary, but I just immersed myself in it and started to teach myself and learn everything I could about it. Yeah.
And was there, during that journey of being in the gym and then slowly awakening that spirit in you that was alive?
Actually, it's a funny, I don't know whether it did that, but what happened was, the gym that I actually became a member of was like one of the gyms in Western Australia that had some of the best natural bodybuilders in Australia and the world. They all trained there, which I would never have known that, right? So after probably about 6 months of being in the gym, starting to lift a bit of weights and changing my diet. I mean, I gave up alcohol, cigarettes, everything, cold turkey, the day I joined. Like, I really, really committed to it. You know what I mean? Like, there was none of this kind of, dibble dabble, dabble in this, try, I had to go all in. And I think it was about 6 months of watching them, and I was like, starting to become a little bit social. The gym was great. They'd talk to me when I walked in. But anyway, they were all going to it. A lot of them were getting ready for a natural bodybuilding show in Perth. And one lady just said to me one day, you should come along and watch. You don't seem to have many friends, and you're not very social. And I went, okay, I'll come along. It completely changed my life, Nigel. So I went and watched the show. I'm sitting there quiet as a mouse, thinking, what's this going to be? A lot of people have that, and even myself, I had that preconception that it's steroids, cartoon-like character-looking bodies, unhealthy, fluoro-orangey color, you know what I mean? Like things I'd kind of seen slightly over the years, but it was nothing like that. It was so amazing, a natural bodybuilding competition with human body in the form of healthy, lean, functional. Oh man, and I was in awe of what I saw. But what got me going mainly, Nigel, was at the end of the competition, they awarded the overall winners. So they normally have an overall winner, men's bodybuilding, women's figure, female bodybuilding, and they all got awarded a check at the end with like $5,000, and they said this will take you to the world titles. I was like, what? There's a world. You can become a world champion in this kind of sport, right? And the whole show that I was watching, I'd never seen a show before. No one taught me anything, but I know horses. I know conformation. I know conformation, which I now relate to symmetry. I know conditioning, right? I know with horses. I know horses with nutrition. And I picked every single winner of that bodybuilding competition. I said, number 2, in my brain, number 4 is going to be number 1. She's going to win. He's going to win. I got every single one right. And I was like, oh yeah, I can see what they're doing here. I just looked at it purely from a horse or equestrian point of view. And then I also thought, Nigel, I've ridden horses since I was 7 years old to 18. And when you ride horses 4 to 6 hours a day, your upper body strength, core strength, you develop quite good lats, right? Because that's an area that you work. And the woman that won the overall had this big wide back, and I went, man, my back's wider than that underneath all this fat. And I said, I reckon I could do this. And I've been a binge drinking lunatic for like 10 years, but it sparked that excitement, and my athlete hat went back on, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I set a goal before I left that day, Nigel, that night, that I was going to become the world champion natural bodybuilder within 5 years. Who does that?
And I imagine you achieved that goal.
Well, I did. Well, I went 1 month over, I think, or 1 or 2 months over, which was quite annoying, But when I went to the gym the next day and I told everyone at the reception, I loved it. Thank you for inviting me. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to win this, and they laughed at me. Everybody laughed at me. But it doesn't matter. So when you get a goal, when your why becomes strong and you put the blinkers on and you become so passionate about something, and it's a second chance to maybe achieve what you'd wanted to achieve when you were 7 years old, and you put it on the fridge. Man, I didn't care what they said. I said, you watch this space. And that's what I did. And within the very next year, I went in and I won that show the next year. And then I won the Australian title that year, and I continued to compete and learn everything I could, as much as I could. And then 3 years in, I started to feel a bit unwell, and I had an elevated heart rate, and I was like, but I was I was an Australian champion, so I was well on the way to be that world champion within 5 years. And I had to go to the doctor, and they rushed me straight to the cardiac ward, Nigel. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, what is happening? And I had found out that I'd been born with aortic stenosis. Do you know what aortic stenosis is?
It's a heart condition.
Yeah, so it's the abnormal narrowing of the aortic valve, and over time it causes the heart to enlarge, and ultimately it leads to heart failure. So by the time I'd gone to the doctors, my heart was on the brink of heart failure. It had been growing slowly but surely, day in, day out, from the day I was born, and it was so enlarged and so thickened, it had gone into reverberation. So that's why my heart rate was about 165 when I went to the doctors that day. And I just thought maybe it had been, 3 years of heavy training, calorie restriction, but it wasn't. I was on the brink of heart failure. And I was leg pressing 400 kilos the day before. And he's like, oh, how are you even, anyway. So they said I'd require urgent open heart surgery. I needed to have a donor aortic valve put in, mechanical valve, go on heavy doses of warfarin, become a haemophiliac, and never weight train with any type of intensity ever again, let alone have any children. I was 30 years old, and my world champion, my world kind of, to win that world title was completely over again.
Wow. And so here we are again at another junction in your life where the body's failing you, and it's almost in grasp again, and that must have been
I think that's the worst part, Nigel. It's that for me, I know there's so many great stories. I mean, it's so much hardship, and so many people have been through so much, but I don't know, that feeling of just being so close and always gets taken away. That for me is the killer more so than the physical side of things, because, I do the right thing. I put the work in place. I do the consistency. I have the right, and just tease me, get me just about there, and then gone. Now that would, most people would, you know, go, well, I got to get, especially for the second time, right? And I was like, but the beauty of it though, Nigel, I've been there before. I asked if there was a second, if there was an alternative to mechanical aortic valve replacement, so I could consume, you know, I wanted to resume, I wanted to win that title. I needed to, purely, I think too, because I had a bit of a pattern. I didn't want to go back down that old road, and it was highly likely that it would, and I'd probably go down that road quicker and harder because it was the second time that I didn't achieve it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the pain would have still been there in the background, and then it would have just been added to, and then there would have been
it would have just reignited it, flared it up again, bang, she's straight back into that old pattern, you know? But anyway, so they said in Western Australia there was no other way, but I checked myself out of hospital. I refused to let them do the mechanical. They wanted to do it the next morning because they said you will die any moment, like you're on the brink of heart failure. But I checked myself out. I wanted to give myself the opportunity, Nigel, to see if there was another way. You know, I know the doctors and the, you know, medical fraternity is amazing, but they want to fix you as quick as possible, but they didn't realize my background and my history. So I did that, and I found a surgeon in Melbourne doing a radical surgery procedure called the Ross procedure, and only a very small handful of people in the world had it done, and he's the only surgeon that was doing it. I would be able to resume full training. They would take my aortic valve out, take my pulmonary valve out, modify it and put it into the diseased aortic position, and then wait and get a human donor pulmonary valve. I just needed to get to Melbourne without dying on the aeroplane. So I was like, ooh, and my mum's like, really? No. No. And I'm like, yeah. So the next day I was on an aeroplane, didn't tell Qantas, mind you. No one had any idea. I was sweating, I was a bit clammy, and my resting heart rate at that stage was probably around 170, 180, something like that. But the why was so strong, Nigel, and I knew I had to give myself the opportunity, and, you know, and I ran the gauntlet, and it worked.
Yeah, you did.
It worked.
Wow.
And I had the surgery. It was a massive success, and I'm on 1 aspirin a day. They said you'd probably give me 10 years, that it would be good, which I thought that will enable me to do my competitions and have children, that kind of thing. And it would just give me choices and get those things, and then I'll deal with it later. And while I was in there having the surgery, I was listening to a lot of Tony Robbins' work, and he was talking about the power of plants and people that were reversing diabetes, curing cancer with plant-based diet. So while I was recovering, I went, ding, I reckon I'm going to go plant-based and see if I can rebuild this body. I've got about 17 months before the 5 years are up. I need something that's going to regenerate the body quickly, because I was running out of time because the 5 years was coming up. Because remember, I've set the date. I have to, you know.
You're stubborn. You're stubborn.
Anyway, so I went 100% plant-based when I got home, and it took 18 months to the day, and I won the Olympia natural bodybuilding title. 100% plant-based, 100% drug-free. And that was
at that time, when you won that championship, was there anybody competing against you who was saying they were natural but were not?
Oh, there probably was. I mean, it's very, very hard to say. I mean, you know, all over the world, every competition, natural federation, you've got your tested federations, you've got your non-tested federations, right? It's hard to say who would be on gear and who isn't on gear. You know what I mean? I wouldn't know. I was so closed with my blinkers on, I didn't care. And you know what? For me, I'd love to go up against people that are a little bit enhanced, because that really shows that the power of plants and what I do and how I do it, it's been a long time coming, can match them. Because, you know, obviously the gear and that kind of thing works. You know, it helps them a lot. But it gives them a lot about the outcomes afterwards. When they're older, it's aging on the body. It can cause a lot of issues. I would never do that because I already had a heart problem. You know what I mean? So it was definitely not conducive for somebody like me.
If you didn't have that heart condition diagnosed when you did, and you did start taking any of those sort of things, it would have been the end of it, you know, like if
100%,
you know,
100%. And look, for me, when I got into bodybuilding, Nigel, I didn't get into it like to ever take anything like that. But I do think there is that people can find it easy to go down that path nowadays, because the competitors that are winning are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, it's all about quality to me, not quantity. So, you know, it's just a shame that the way that I think bodybuilding has gone is we've lost that beautiful symmetry, that beautiful conditioning. It's not about how big you can become, it's about how well you can sculpt it and that gorgeous symmetry. You know, like years ago, you look at Frank Zane and Arnold Schwarzenegger and all that, they probably all dabbled in a bit of this, that, and the other, but nothing like that they do nowadays, you know, and the look now is very different to what it used to be.
It's very freakish and very monster-like, and not very complimenting, and very far removed from the classics back in the day. But I'm curious, Michelle, as you're a trainer and a conditioning coach, and with a natural sort of philosophy around detox and cleansing and plant-based nutrition, what are you able to see be birthed through athletes? And this is to anybody out there who's watching, who's going to the gym and maybe looking around the gym, seeing that there's, you know, people competing, or maybe talking about competing, and maybe thinking that there's just one way to compete. And you know, Michelle is bringing in another way to compete, where you can be 100% natural, and really it's not just it's a lifestyle, but it's about how to treat your body, how to take care of your body, and to allow your body to go through this process and not get it broken in the process, how to rejuvenate it and regenerate it so it's more functional. So what are you seeing that's possible that keeps impressing you or blowing your mind in the work that you do with people, men and women, who you take through this process?
Yeah, well, you know, what really blows my mind is how lean I can get people. When the power of plants, right? It's you're looking at. I look at food from a nutritional standpoint, or a nutrient. I'm chasing nutrients, Nigel, not calories. So I do like my holistic prep with competitors is we look at protein, fats, and carbs. Yes, there's still that bodybuilding kind of, you know, approach, but we do it with plants. So everything has this massive follow through. And when you give the body, we actually, because I'm an extremist, I overdo things, right? So no one ever taught me this. I overdid the nutrients. And the more nutrients you put in, the leaner you can get, because the body is not in any state of kind of disarray, or it's not in any, it will release fat, because fat, a lot of the time, as we know, is a bit of a safety mechanism. The body it protects us. Toxicity gets shunted into fat cells. If your body's beautifully alkaline, the internal environment is so clean, and you put massive amount of nutrients in, I can get people so lean because the body just releases all the fat. We're still doing the bodybuilding approach. We're doing the cardio. My guys do like fasted cardio. Then we will eat. Then they'll do their resistance training, and then they'll do a high intensity cardio session later in the day. So I'm kind of getting the benefits of metabolic kind of revving, and then I'm getting fat burning in the morning, and then we're doing hypertrophy. But we are pushing in that many thousands and thousands of plant nutrients, and the body's so clean and alkalized. I'm getting women that, like, I've just had my competitor Jen, she was unbelievable. She was just over 4% body fat. And the same with me. When I compete, 4% body fat, I do all the DEXA scans. I had my period, like my hormonal profile was 100%.
Yeah, just everybody listen to this, because this is almost unknown in the bodybuilding industry.
100%.
That you can get, whether you're just going to the gym and you're really like into it, and like you're making it like a real lifestyle, and you're really like pushing the weights as a woman, but when you even go even further to compete, that you can still compete if you're taking care of the body, not hurting the body, that you can still maintain onto all your natural cycles and to have your period.
Yeah, 100%. Well,
can you explain, Michelle, to the audience, like, what is happening when you, let's just say, what's the difference? Like, what's happening that doesn't happen when you like kill yourself with fasting, or like with like cutters, or whatever you call those things,
calories,
that take out the diuretics and all those things? Like, what is it that happens there that doesn't happen when you fuel the body with nutrition?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, just so we know, physiologically, anything around that 15% of body fat for females, say, right, 15% and under, generally, the human body thinks it cannot sustain another life, or it can't create life. You know, that's what women are put on this earth to do. And I know everyone goes, oh, whatever, but we are here to have babies, right? That's just physiologically, you know, evolution, all that. And when we get under 15% body fat, the human body goes, that's not really conducive to have a pregnancy. So that tends to be why the period stops and and the hormonal profile starts to change. So then you're kind of fighting. And we've got girls that 15% is way too fat for natural or for any type of bodybuilding. We need to get them at least to 6, 7, 8%, right? So if the body's in this starved state nutritionally and they're doing a high workload, the more work you do, Nigel, from a training perspective, the more nutrition the human body requires. But we tend to do the opposite. We put the workload up, we cut the food, which means when you cut the calories, you cut the nutrients. Then you're getting below that 15%. The female body's going, oh my gosh, it starts shutting things down. It's going, no, no, no. Then the girls start doing more and more training. They're doing more and more cardio. They pull the food back more and more, right? They're losing muscle at a rate of knots. Oh gosh. Whereas if you put your body into a state of a nutrient surplus, right? A high nutrient surplus and just a very slight calorie deficit, and you put the right amount of training in at the right time with the right amount of recovery, your body will just get leaner and leaner and leaner, and you will not lose your periods and things like that because the body is getting what it needs. It's just the output is too high for the input that's going in. For the nutrient support's just not there. You cannot out-supplement a bad, shitty diet or a non-nutrient dense diet. That's the problem, I think, where everyone's going wrong. They're using the synthetics, the vitamin, you know, everything's pills, powders, potions. You need to get it from the real source. Like one apple has 400 nutrients roughly, you know, and it's got but you need all 400 of those, Nigel, to uptake those nutrients, you know. And if the body gets that in such a high volume and you're doing the right work at the right time with the right recovery, you'll just get leaner and leaner, and you'll get, you know, like beautiful shiny hair, great skin. There's not a lot of that going on out there right now because they're really in a state of starvation from a nutrient point of view.
Yeah, like, you know, I see, you know, I work as a therapist, you know, with a lot of to work psychoanalytically, psychotherapeutically with bodybuilders who struggle all over the world. And you know, I have old and young who struggle with a lot of acne. They struggle with kidney function, filters and stones. They struggle with liver issues. They struggle with massive bloating, massive congestion in their digestive systems. But that's just the physiological stuff that they be telling me about. Sometimes I work with that with them, but mostly it's the emotional struggles and strain and hardship, the psychological pain and the sort of loneliness and the obsessive behaviors and all the things that go in, which I think come part and parcel to a lot of sports. But the physical signs that something's not right is so evident.
Massive. But what we've got to remember is it's not rocket science, right? Like the liver today is the same liver as it was 200 years ago. But the liver 200 years ago, Nigel, was never exposed to all of these chemicals, toxins, you know what I mean, preservatives, these chemicals like it is now. And we're putting a high workload on top of that. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, for me, it's like, and all of those symptoms that you're talking about are just the body crying out for it wants to get back to that homeostasis. It's just becoming so polluted that these bodily systems just can't keep up with it, you know, because these compounds weren't around 200-300 years ago, and we haven't changed. You know, it's the same organ. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. It's very sad because, and again, we're trying to be high performance, or body composition change. I think is really hard. So putting on lean muscle mass and losing body fat, they say, is impossible to do at the same time. Well, I've proved over and over and over again that is not the case. You know, I know they haven't done really many studies on it. I don't even think I've not found one. But if you go into a slight calorie deficit but a nutrient surplus, you will get fat loss and muscle gain at the same time. But also these things physiologically, the human body can only do so much over a certain period of time. The human population is in such a hurry, Nigel, they want it now. And the body can't, if you want to do it this natural way, it is the best way because, it's from an anti-aging perspective and all those other things, but you have to be in it for the long haul. It's not something that can be done in 12 weeks or people want to be a world champion in 12 weeks. It took me 9 years, Matt,
Yeah, and another thing, Michelle, I want to talk about today, and that's true, like the way we live in a convenient society where everybody wants a quick gratification, without putting in the work. Everybody wants to skip the queue, and unfortunately, sometimes skipping the queue can really damage your body and 100%. damage your mind. So in this industry that you've been in for these last, good, like maybe 15 years in it now, 16 years.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what do you see as a problem that's emerging in the bodybuilding industry at the moment? I'm having this dream as I'm talking to you, like imagine what happened if everybody in the Mr. Olympia in the States all were plant-based. Like I'm just playing with that idea in my mind. But I'm curious about what are you seeing that's a problem that's rising in the sport of bodybuilding? I know you're in the natural bodybuilding world, but what are you seeing as something that you're concerned about?
Well, I'm really concerned about the size and the thickness of the bodies and the lack of, it's the lack of quality. It's all about quantity. It is too much of a load on organs. There's a lot of growth hormone going on. There's obviously a lot of steroids, all of that kind of thing. It's pushing the body past its limits, you know what I mean? And young people are looking at that, looking at the magazines. They're looking at who's getting sponsored, who's endorsing this, that, and the other. They're thinking that's the way it needs to be. I mean, what is it going to be in 5 years? These people are just going to explode. The organs just not going to be able to handle it, So I do think that's the issue. Is it's just getting bigger and bigger. And I mean, that's not always just the athlete. That can come from the judging side of things. You know what I mean?
This is something I want to talk about, Michelle, because I'm wondering what drives this. It's, of course, it has to come to the judges at some stage, and of course, since Ronnie Coleman and there seems to be a graduation towards, I suppose, maybe even Dorian Yates, but as you go on and on in the bodybuilding industry, there seems to be always these sort of mass monsters that start to emerge, and what is creating that? Is it the judges? I remember one interview with Ronnie where the judges were telling him to be smaller, he needed to tone it down. I think they forgot about that somehow. And what do you think's needed? Is there an education? How can we create change? I want to talk about the physical with you, and then I'm going to talk about how I think emotionally there needs to be support for this industry in a way that is crying out for it with all the suicides and the deaths and things that have been happening. But from a physical, how do we change the judges' opinions? How do we do that? Who's the governor who governs all this?
Yeah, well, I mean, all federations have a judging criteria. They really do. And I think that it's not rocket science and it's not difficult. It's about revisiting the Bible of bodybuilding on how it was created. You know what I mean? Go back to the olden days. Let's revisit the actual criteria. Now, the criteria, if I can share with you, for men's bodybuilding has always been kind of like what you're looking for is an X shape, right? Big shoulders, tight, small waist, big quads. You're looking for an X. Female bodybuilding similar, but figure, which is massive nowadays, is more a Y shape, right? So you're looking for wide shoulders, tiny waist, tight legs. It's about, years ago, it's all about conditioning and symmetry. Now it's become a bit more about mass. And I think that also, not only is it just the judges, that would be coming down to society wanting, it's a bit like go back to the gladiator days. So, anything that's way out there, it gets the, you know what I mean? Because bodybuilding has never been a mainstream sport to make loads of money. But it kind of, if it's out there and it starts to shock people, it can bring the crowds in, that kind of thing. So I think there's a number of things that's contributing to the size of the to the athletes. But I think it's a crying shame. But the way to fix it is revisiting, bringing back that beautiful, because it's hard to keep a tight waist and have a massive wide shoulders and lats.
You know, like I think it was, I forget the name of the guy with the mustache who won the classic in Mr. Olympia this year. I forget
sure.
And it was, you know, like I think it was 4 or 5 years ago they brought in the classic shape into the Mr. Olympia.
Gorgeous.
And it's you know, it's so like it's not the superhero. It's like an everyday person who's put a lot of effort and work in, and it's not freakish.
But that is difficult to do. It's very difficult to do. It's the same for figure competitors, right? Figure girls, I think, don't get enough credit. It is very difficult because the figure division is muscularity whilst keeping your femininity.
Wow.
I mean, holy moly, that's a hard thing to do. So they want that muscularity, but they want it needs to be just the right muscle in the right spots. Otherwise you start to look masculine. Very hard to get the shoulders and the arms the size you need, very difficult to keep the waist like that, you know. And this is where it comes down to amazing training techniques and really knowing how to do stuff. It's just becoming a bit more sheer, you know, brute force and like, you know, CrossFit. There's so much, you know, that they're more. See, bodybuilding is not performance at all. It's about creating a sculpture. CrossFit is performance. They've got certain criteria. They've got to do certain amount of things in certain amount of time. They've got to be able to lift that much. Bodybuilding, I was probably one of the weakest bodybuilders in the world, but I had the best symmetry because I did quality training. It's not how much I lifted, it was how well I lifted it. My workouts took a long time. It was mental. It's about holding time under load. You know what I mean? Volume training. Everyone wants to go fast. It's all, leave your ego at the door. Not about that. You know what I mean? This is about quality over quantity. So I feel that's where we've kind of gone wrong. Everyone's just like, the whole society's going faster, heavier, you know, like, let's bring it back, slow it down, quality, look after the body. You know what I mean? There's so much more to life than just bodybuilding. At the end of the day, unless you know, those Olympia, the big, you know, the one that's mainly sponsored, but for the average bodybuilder, it's a hobby, for goodness sake. Don't lose your life, don't lose your job, don't lose your wife or husband, don't, you know, for a plastic trophy, or most of them don't even get a trophy. You know what I mean? Like, it's not worth it. You know, there's so much more to people than that. But I think that's where we're going wrong. It's not just the judging. I think it's just the whole.
It's you know, we had Dave Crossland in here not so long ago, and he was talking about, it was so ironic. He says, you know, like it's about getting so huge to, like, you know, and for what, like, just to like impress the guys, you know, and to like 100%. Dedicate all your life and like put so much effort in and like spend all that money on steroids and everything else, food, and then just like you know, like block out the best part of your life, just like what's it actually for, you know.
100%. That's right. But they get a bit of significance, Nigel.
That's it. Short-lived.
That's right. They're looking for significance. That's one of their human needs, right? And that's obviously one of the top ones for them, you know. And they may not be, you know, firing on all cylinders in every other department. And that's one thing that they get. They get. I would say it's significance and certainty, because they're certain that if they look that way, they're going to get significance, right? And that is such a driver and such a powerful thing, because, you know, those top two, what people will kind of do anything to
well, you know, whether it's the top two, or it's just when you're conditioning and you're cutting and everybody's saying you're looking so great, you know. And I work with, you know, from a psychological perspective with a lot of bodybuilders, and that's the time when they're skipping, and then it's such a small window. And then what happens when they're not being complimented in the gym? What happens whenever they're not noticing that people are not looking at them in the mirror? You know, like, I can identify with this. I think years ago, I was able to know within myself that I was hiding so much insecurity by masking it with having a certain type of look. And at that time I was masking it with a particular type of diet as well. When I was like so proud of being vegan at that time, and like the kind of hiding behind it in a way. And I was doing the same with the gym. And like these were the things that were defining me, and it was like so off balance, and it was so hiding so much insecurity. And thank God, and that's why I do this work now, is like when I started to work through that with my therapist, and I could see so clearly, and then what I was avoiding. And I see this is a huge thing within the world today, not just in bodybuilding, but in that bodybuilding world, there's a way in which your body becomes who you are. And I think you just said it, like you're so much more than
they become a shell. That's right. And they're forgetting about that, the inside, and how they're relating to their children or their family or their wives, or a lot of women, they're having the children and the bodybuilder, the men, they're looking amazing, and then they're looking at their wives and they go, oh, you're not really attractive anymore. It's like, but they've just had a baby. I went through that myself. It was like, wow, you know what I mean? I had the best female physique in the world a year ago, and now I've had our child, and but the female body can't look like that when you're going through that. But I'm still the same person, and I'm still the world champion natural bodybuilder, but I've got this beautiful child now, and that it's very sad when they don't connect and they look and think, you should look a certain way. And it's just...
How was that for you? How was that where you, like when you, and this is again, like this is what you call engaging with life, moving on with life, where bodybuilding isn't your life, where it's something that, and this is what Dave talked about. He was looking in the industry, and it was like, for the people who did bodybuilding and loved it, they saw that they had the best mental health. But where there was the people where bodybuilding was who they were, for example, or fitness was who they were, those are the ones who were deeply troubled. So what was it like to be able to choose having a baby at that time, and to be able to transit through sometimes not being received because you were, or how were you receiving yourself, seeing you with a different shape?
Well, it was tough, but for me as a person, because my competing years were quite different, because as you know, with my story, it was I did it from a purely sporting point of view. Mm-hmm. I'd set those goals and I wanted to win this, I wanted to win that, and within that time frame, and when I did, I was retiring. I wasn't I was behind the scenes. You'd never see me anyway. I train an old tracksuit. Like I was like the dark horse. I like to be the underdog, and then I come in, I win, fuck off. You know what I mean? Take my trophy and I go home. Whereas, I never was on social media. No, I didn't know who I was up against. I was only competing against me. So that's
a big problem nowadays.
It's very different, because again, it's the significance thing. They're getting the, you're amazing, whatever. So my transition for me was very easy, because I'd chosen to have my daughter and this, that, and the other. But what I did find hard was that my ex-husband, he didn't find me attractive. He wanted me to stay looking that way, even though I'd just gone through childbirth. And I mean, I'm high risk. I've got major heart problems. I was high risk for heart attack during the entire pregnancy. Wasn't allowed to be active. It was a very scary time. But he's very connected to the bodybuilding on the outside world of what he looked like. It was all about significance for him. So it was difficult. And then what happened was, not that I really wanted to, I ended up going, well, you know what? It was so much pressure on me to look a certain way. I ended up going back into competing way earlier. My baby was only little, because I thought, well, I'm not getting the attention. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It just happened. And I got back into it to prove a point. But then I was competing to prove a point to my husband that I'm still worthy. I'm still attractive. I can still do this. But I didn't enjoy the competing so much after that. But I went on and I won everything again. And I looked the best I'd ever looked, but it wasn't, I didn't enjoy it so much. And I took time away from my child and stuff to do something that I really, But I did it for another couple of years, won everything, and then I finally retired. But it was very different at that last couple of years. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And, for anybody watching out there, like, often we do things for the wrong reasons. Sometimes we're doing it to impress somebody. We're doing it to inflate something that's hiding something else. Sometimes we're deeply insecure, and we think that this is going to give us the feel good. my advice to everyone who's watching is like, like talk about it, share about it, go to a professional. It's okay to train, but if you're training to pump yourself up and feel that you're, getting validation in that way over a long period of time, then as you said, there becomes there's emptiness there. If this is all there is, there's so much more here. And to really look at, how we talk to ourselves, and how we can be like, I don't know many sports, Michelle, but bodybuilding sport can be very, very critical when, especially the assessments, the continual assessments of the body, the shape. It's not good enough. There's more of this, that needs to change. Like that, for some people's personalities, that's just not a match. It can really.
No, it's not. And they can't, that's what I'm saying. It becomes too much for them, and they get too involved about how they have to look all the time, and they can't get out of their head, and then they can't enjoy the rest of their life, and it takes over. And they're not making loads of money out of this sport. That's the thing. It's if I can relate people to think back a little bit more about thinking as a hobby or whatever, because you're not making loads of money. Don't ruin and lose everything else along the way, So if people become a little bit too attached to, oh my God, I've got to look this way, I've got to look that. I've got to remember, bodybuilding is still a subjective sport as well, right? You don't know who's judging you, what they're looking at, it's never, because it's not performance based, and nobody knows what body fat percentage you are. It's how you present on the day. There's so many different variables or different factors that can come in on the day. But you might think you're the best and you look the best you can look, but there's somebody better than you, or it's a judge's preference. That's why it's such a mental kind of I think can be a bit of a mental issue, because they think, well, I've done what the judges look. This is the criteria. I've done the work. I've done the diet. I've made it. I deserve to win. Well, and you don't get it, then they have a meltdown. But you can't be like that. You need to always learn. You learn from your losses. You become better. I've lost more shows than I've won. But I look at it. I look at the photos. I go to the head judge. I get my feedback. Where can I do better? Blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, you have to be such a standout to ever think you're ever going to just win a show, because it's so subjective. It's just like ice skating and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have that sort of temperament, it can be real. It could be a real cruel sport. It could be a real depressive sport. I find a lot of depression at times whenever that, and again, this is, I think we all can be judgmental of ourselves at times, but it can really be exaggerated at times in certain areas. And definitely fitness to hide something, it's going to come thick and it's going to come fast. But 100%. Michelle, I'm curious about something I've been thinking about, as I was thinking about our talk today. And, as you're working in the natural bodybuilding world at the moment, and I think it doesn't, like, when you see people winning and losing competitions, and what is it that is it a sort of self-care that you would promote to them, or sort of self compassion, or like a sort of healthier self-talk to be able to get them through these moments where they have losses or they don't get the competition? Because imagine, like, from your perspective, you were wanting to be an Olympian, and the pain of not being an Olympian and drinking, to numb the pain, and the sort of journey you were on, the hard-earned journey where you learn to love yourself along the way and find something that you were passionate about that became a purpose. Yeah. For those people who are on that journey to be in, whether amateur or training hard and wanting to compete, what's the sort of things you could say or support them to have a new way of thinking about themselves? So, like, what is something that's self-loving, that's you must do in this industry?
Well, I think you've got to compete for the right reasons. And I think let's get away from that superficial, what we look like. Like, let's get really deep down. Like, if you become a world champion bodybuilder and you have the best female or male physique in the world, what can you do with that? What platform will that give you? You'll have people following you, looking at you. You're leading by example. show them what can be done with healthy, full of vitality, functional body that's in an aging at a beautiful rate of knots, not like in a degenerative state. You know what I mean? Lead by example. We can be amazing because bodybuilders are very consistent. They're very structured. It's a difficult sport because most sports, you know, like football, basketball, you're doing a high workload, but you can eat what you like. They train hard. Bodybuilders train hard, but we've got the restrictiveness on the diet side, right? It's a very mentally hard thing to do the same thing every day for months and months and months, you know? So I think people that do the sport, we should celebrate them because it's difficult to do, but let's show the general population, if you follow us, let's show you how healthy and what you can achieve with that. You know, like I've been able to speak all over the world now. I've created a great brand. You know, I'm just an ordinary woman that's achieved extraordinary things, and bodybuilding isn't a catalyst for speaking worldwide. You know what I mean? But I've used it for that. So, and now that's why I'm passionate about sharing the story, and if I can inspire people to stay healthy, and you can still get a great result. It just may take a bit longer, but when you get the result, people will respect you because you've done it the hard way and you've done it the right way.
Yeah, I like that. The hard way, not the right way. And I know it's sometimes it can be hard to do it the right way, and to be able to put that work and effort in. But what I love is that when you shine, if you do, is like that you educate that you can do this in a healthy way, that you can like you can rejuvenate, not degenerate, and that's powerful. And talking about rejuvenation, tell us about how your juice company and how that really helps, because this is something that I haven't come across in Europe too much, is where there's an active sort of raw juices with protein in them that have 5 kilos, 4 kilos. How many kilos?
In a 500 ml bottle of our juice, it takes 1.8 kilos of Australian produce that we cold press to make that volume of liquid, and then we blend through really slowly vegan protein, and then fresh avocado, hemp nectar, and chia flour. So I was looking again when I was bodybuilding and I was rebuilding the body. I did the exact same protein, fats, and carb ratio as I did as a meat eater when I was preparing, but I just had to flick it over to plants. And man, when I was working it out, I was like, oh gosh, I need to eat like 5 kilos of kale and broccoli, and I couldn't eat that volume to get that same ratio, right? Mm-hmm. So that's when I started to blend it and drink it, because you couldn't physically chew it, you know? So, and then I started cold pressing it because I couldn't handle the fiber as smoothies or soup. So I was then cold pressing it, and then I wanted to I didn't want the blood sugar spike, and I wanted to slow the absorption down. So then I started to blend the fats in, the protein in, and it was like rocket fuel. And that's what that's how the Pressedplus protein juices were created when I was aiming for the Olympia, because that's when I decided to go plant-based, same meat eating ratios, modified it for plants, worked out I couldn't eat that volume. It was too much on my gut, too much fiber. And then I juiced it. And then by putting the fats and protein, it was like unbelievable. So you get your protein hit, but you also get the nutrient return, which was what was great for recovery. Yeah. Wow.
Like anybody listening out there, connect with Michelle and bring that to Europe, because we need more.
Love to. Yes. Yeah. Eventually we will. It's Australia-wide at the moment, and obviously COVID's been a bit of an issue, but yes, we'd love to. I mean, it's it's the world's first meal replacement that's made out of real food. I mean, that's a bit scary, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like I'm all about bringing people back to nature and eating food as nature intended. But what I worked out, and it was like I'm living proof of that, and what my body was able to do was the sheer volume that you need. It's nowhere near what people are thinking. You need so much, and then it will rejuvenate and rebuild the body, but you can't physically eat that. We need to drink it, and then you need the right macro ratios. And if you do that, change your life.
Well, I've worked, I've been vegan for a long time. I'm not vegan at the moment. And I knew vegan bodybuilders, and I knew vegan bodybuilders who didn't understand what you understand. And when you are training hard and you're not eating enough, you look like death warmed up. It doesn't work.
100%. Yeah, you're
And
breaking down. You need that.
you're
You
breaking
need that.
down, and it's like, yeah, I'm vegan, but it's not healthy. It's like, really, you got to
No.
understand it. So again, anybody who's thinking about, going down the vegan bodybuilder route, in the link here, you'll have Michelle's details. Please reach out to a professional so you know that you will get the proper advice and the proper care. Anyone out there who's struggling within the bodybuilding industry, who is realizing that they're hiding behind an image, or they're struggling with depression, or they're struggling with self-defeat or self-critical, self-loathing tendencies, or like really realizing that they're in a bad way with bodybuilding, please just send us a message, because we have links to people in your area, and also we directly help people from well-beings who do struggle in the industry. But again, Michelle, we're winding down here, and I'm curious just to ask you one final question, and that is, to somebody new who has been watching social media like most people do, and watching all the information around about women's health, men's health, of course, how it's skewed, how it's contaminated, how it's warped somehow sometimes, who maybe wants to start going to the gym to be like that, to need to be, to have that image, to have that, to have that look, to get that, to be popular or whatever.
Yeah.
What would you say to that girl or young man who's stepping in to want to try to get that they see in front of their faces all the time in social media? How could you speak to them and redirect them to some sort of sanity?
I would say, I know it's a hard one because it's such a big subject, but to keep it really simple, and you all probably understand with me, I'm very layman's terms, very basic, but it is not what it seems. What you see on social media, the pictures, the life behind that is nothing like that. You know what I mean? And that, again, it's a visual thing that from an internal point of view, there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of pain, and the human body will only stay looking like that for a certain amount of time. You know what I mean? And it gets harder and harder as you get older and older. So I would just reach out and invite people to really kind of, it comes from within, and that, fat loss, beautiful body is just a byproduct of becoming healthy, and keep your faculties, and just remember what all of that, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's a little bit like that in bodybuilding. We all know how to hold ourselves, we twist and we hoik up the hip, and it is not as it seems, you know what I mean? And a lot of these programs that you're looking at in big fitness magazines, Muscle and Fitness, it's very different for a natural athlete. We can't do that kind of volume, this, that, and the other. You need to seek out a professional to work, and everybody's body is different. But the biggest thing though, Nigel, is just like, it has to come from within. What you see is not what you get on those social media. And I feel very, very sorry for so many of them. And I'd love to just grab them and go, oh my gosh, and remind people to remember to compete for the right reasons. And I like to be the underdog and show people how amazing, because we've all got magnificence within us, you know what I mean? And just show everybody around you how great you can be. And you don't need to Photoshop it and cut bits out, Yeah.
Wow. Michelle, it's so refreshing to speak to you, because it's something which I'm feeling right now. And it's, I don't know if you're picking this up in the audience here right now, but there's something real and authentic about how Michelle shares. It's not like toxic positivity. It's not about trying to promote a certain thing. It's not, it's this, Michelle's sharing here is birthed from real lived experiences that have distilled this heart that's sitting here in front of us today. And it's so real, like, to hear her talking about, like, they bring it back to being fit. But what's fitness is like being healthy. How to be healthy.
And showing the human body in its best state. Human body is a beautiful machine. Like, if we get back to the trillions and trillions of bodily processes that go on every day, we need to just remember how powerful and amazing it is, and let's look after it and showcase it in its best possible way. Don't enhance it with something that's not real. Like, let's look at bodies how they're made to be. Bodies can be amazing done naturally, it's just harder. But to me, hard work and longevity in the sport and things like that shows heart and courage, man.
Wow. What an ambassador, everybody. I'm very humbled to be here. And I also found my times getting excited, thinking about, I wish I was in Perth with you. And I'd say, Michelle, you're going to the gym tomorrow. Because in the middle of your sharing, I'm thinking, Jesus, I wish I was there. I might be there in the future, and I will be giving you a call to say, come around and kick my ass for 45 minutes. Thank you. I'm deeply honored. And again, anybody listening out there, it takes an ambassador. Sometimes it's really good that we, that we have coaches, that we have people who know more than us. I remember when I came into the gym, I thought I knew everything. I was throwing stuff around and I was just trying to impress people. I hadn't a clue what I was doing. And over the years, I learned you gotta get a coach, you gotta get a trainer. And anybody out there who's feeling the heart essence from Michelle right now, or feeling her passion, feeling her journey, and what's distilled through that, this truth about, if you want to be in fitness, it's really about nutrition. It's about being healthy. You can do it in a healthy way. You just have to be shown how to do it. Anybody's interested, please send us a message. We'll forward it to Michelle or contact Michelle directly. What's your email, Michelle?
Michelle at Nazafit, Nazaf for Fred, it.com.au, or if they go on to Pressedplus.com, they can always send me a message through the website. Yeah.
Awesome. Michelle,
or connect with me on social media. I love to say hi, and I'm always willing to serve and happy to serve and help. I love it.
Oh, what a heart, and what a journey. And thank you, Michelle, for being with us here tonight. And
you're welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, it's been an honor. Thank you, Michelle. And so again, everybody, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this wonderful sort of presentation of what it means to be in fitness and how to do it in a way that's healthier, and to know that there's other ways, and to know that, we all struggle. None of us do this thing perfectly, but reach out for help. And if you have questions, don't not ask. Like, check in with Wellbeings, check in with Michelle, or check in with the trainer in your gym that you're inspired by, who can take time to chat to you, who has a personality where you can sit with them and chat with them. But don't try to work it out by yourself. And
trainer doesn't know what he doesn't know. If you don't open up to your trainer, they can't help you. You need to speak, and you need to be honest. They're not going to judge you. If you're eating off the diet and you're not doing the work, still be honest, because otherwise they're guessing, figuring out, why is this plan that I've designed for them? If you're not following it, be open so they can coach you better, and they probably know, because they're smart, right? You can tell when someone's doing the work and when they're not.
Yeah, and it's all about nobody's doing this thing perfect. It's really about just being honest, reaching out, putting your ego, in the car before you get into the gym.
Leave it at the door. Yes.
Leave it at the door, and build a community of people who, I love the industry because it can be a rich community of people who know you, and just keep opening your hearts to people. And that has changed this bodybuilding industry, where it's not just, where it can be connective, where it can be open, where you can be real with one another, like real, not positive. It's different.
Yeah.
Where we can be real with one another, and where we can reach out for support to support one another. So, hey, everybody.
And they'll all become much better competitors. There's a big world. There's so many divisions, and it's great you want to be in a hard lineup. You want to be in the best lineups that shows you where you are physically. You don't want to be chasing a trophy and going shitty lineups and finding different competitions that's got, you know what I mean? If we get great competitors, the better and the higher the quality, the better the competition, and then it's good. That's it's what you want. Yeah, you don't want an easy win, You definitely don't want an easy win, because it's not as powerful, I don't reckon.
She's a competitor to the very end, and I think we need to call you the hard competitor. Or a warrior of the heart, which is the closest word actually in the Irish. In Gaelic, we don't have a word for shaman, but the closest word is the warrior of the heart, and you exactly fit that role here. And it's a real honor. So thanks, Michelle. And for everybody, good luck. We'll be back same time next week. Reach out, go training.